You talk too much. Yes, it might sting to hear that, but maybe that's exactly what's been weakening you. While you're busy explaining everything, justifying your every step, venting your emotions, trying to prove you're in control, your power slips through your words. Machiavelli would say, "He who says everything loses everything." That's why the wisest, most feared, most influential people, they speak little, they observe more, and they win in silence. We live in a time where everyone wants to be heard, but no one wants to learn the value of silence. Yet silence, my friend, is the weapon of strategists. It confuses enemies, protects your plans, and earns respect without raising your voice. It protects your energy, your focus, your image. And that's exactly what this video is about to teach you. If you've ever felt drained from over-explaining, if you've lost someone's respect for saying too much, if you've regretted reacting on impulse, then this video was made for you. Because here you'll discover how to use strategic silence as a tool for leadership, protection, and personal mastery. It doesn't matter if you're a leader, a professional, a parent, or someone trying to stay grounded in a noisy, chaotic world. Silence is your greatest defense, but not just any silence. Calculated silence, intentional silence, powerful silence. The kind Machiavelli would use to outplay kings, influence courts, and protect his power even in ruins. And I promise you this, if you watch until the end, you'll leave with a whole new way of seeing power. You'll stop wasting words. You'll learn to use pauses as weapons. You'll understand that sometimes what commands the most respect is what you choose not to say. So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and do not leave before the end. Because what I'm about to reveal in the final moments of this video might forever change the way you communicate, lead, protect yourself, and command authority. Silence your weaknesses. How Machiavelli would use silence to hide vulnerabilities. There's a trap many fall into without even noticing. The urge to overshare, talking about your fears, revealing future plans, exposing inner chaos. It all seems, harmless, but in truth it's like handing ammunition to the enemy. Machiavelli, a master of the power game, knew that every detail revealed could become a weapon turned against you. Silence, then, becomes a shield, a way to protect your emotions, your limits, and your strategy. Those who share too much weaken their defenses. The truth is, not everyone who listens to you wants to see you win. Some listen just to detect cracks in your armor, waiting for the perfect time to strike. In that sense, silence becomes a filter, one that keeps your self-mastery intact while confusing those who try to read you. Picture someone going through a personal crisis, but still standing tall, calm, unshaken. Do they look weak or powerful? That's the magic. Silence creates the image of stability even in inner chaos. You might be crumbling inside, but what others see is control, leadership, and emotional intelligence. Machiavelli wouldn't defend himself with words. He'd use silence. Because in the game of power, showing weakness is like putting a target on your back. But when you're quiet, you become unreadable. In that confusion, you build a wall, not one of bricks, but one of mystery. If people can't sense where to strike, they don't strike at all. Use this in real life. Going through financial struggles? Don't broadcast it. Instead, study. Read the prints and learn how to disguise vulnerability with the appearance of strength. Take strategic actions. Keep your posture, even if you're just surviving inside. That's not fake, that's self-preservation, and preservation is power. People who talk too much often betray themselves. Hidden between the lines is the unconscious desire to be seen, understood, validated. Which is human, yes, but dangerous when you're in competitive or strategic environments. Real leaders use silence not because they know everything, but because they know what not to say. Self-mastery begins at the mouth. There's strength in a calm gaze that says, "I know," even if nothing is spoken. That stillness, that refusal to defend or explain, speaks volumes. It tells others, "You can't read me." That's where influence begins, not in endless talking, but in quiet presence. And yes, this can be trained. Start small. Stop over-explaining. Let people draw their own conclusions. You owe them nothing. Think about the great strategists in history, the ones who truly made their mark, they all knew when to shut up. It wasn't passivity. It was power. It was discipline. They understood that what you don't say can be more powerful than any speech. And when you master that, you stop surviving chaos and start ruling it. So before we move on, do me a favor. Drop a comment below and tell me if this resonates with you. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and whatever you do, don't click away just yet. Because the next truth may hit even harder. When you speak too much, you lose everything. Say everything, lose everything. The trap of oversharing. We live in an era where everything is shared. What people eat, where they're going, who they're with, and even their most personal plans. But is saying everything really a sign of confidence? Machiavelli would disagree. He'd see oversharing as a dangerous trap, an open invitation to manipulation, loss of influence, and the slow erosion of personal authority. Revealing too much is like handing your keys to a stranger. When you expose your fears, dreams, and wounds to everyone, you give away your power. People might seem interested, but not all of them are on your side. Some are just collecting ammunition. Others are silently competing with you. Silence becomes your only real filter, your protection. Machiavelli knew there's power in what's left unsaid. Mysterious people are unsettling, and because of that, they're respected. When you withhold, you force others to wonder. And in that uncertainty, you create presence, authority, influence. In today's world, being unreadable is almost revolutionary. And the best part? You don't have to fake anything. Just don't say it all. Here's a practical example. Job, interviews. The one who overshares tends to overexpose. Admitting insecurities, side plans, or past issues often works against you. Meanwhile, the candidate who keeps it sharp and focused, who reveals just enough, creates intrigue. That's the Machiavellian way. Strategic silence that commands attention. This modern obsession with radical honesty is often just loneliness wearing a mask. And let's be clear, emotional neediness talks too much, gives too much, trusts too much. A true strategist listens, watches, and speaks only when they've read the entire room. And when they speak, they say what's needed, not everything they feel. Mastering the art of holding back is like chess. You don't show all your pieces on the first move. You save your power plays for the right moment. Life, business, relationships, it's all a board game. And those who dominate the timing, the silence, and the message, they win. But the ones who say too much? Eventually they hand over the entire game plan. And think about it. Who's more captivating? Someone who explains every detail, or someone who seems to know more than they let on? Exactly. Mystery attracts. Endless talking? That just numbs people. It's like watching a movie trailer that spoils every twist. By the time the film starts, you already know how it ends. No surprise, no impact. If you want to be remembered, respected, even feared, speak less. Create gaps. Let your words carry weight. Let people wonder. This isn't manipulation. It's emotional intelligence. In communication, those who master silence, master control. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever lost respect by saying too much? Drop a comment below and let me know. And, of course, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. Because next, I'll show you how silence can completely disarm manipulators. Silence as a weapon against manipulators. How to disarm those who try to control you. You manipulators are experts at twisting your words. They wait for emotional reactions, impulsive responses, and moments of vulnerability. And guess what disarms them faster than anything? Silence. When you don't react, you break the cycle. Machiavelli would say, whoever doesn't play the game rewrites the rules. Manipulators need your reaction to steer the conversation. They drop emotional bait. If you really loved me, after all I've done for you, if you respond, you're caught. But if you remain silent, the game freezes. Silence is like cutting the wire to a ticking bomb. No explosion, just peace and power. Machiavelli would use silence as a psychological shield. By refusing to react, you deny the manipulator their only true weapon, control over your emotions. And that, my friend, is a silent slap in the face. Manipulators crumble in the absence of response, because that's when they realize they have no real grip on you anymore. Want a real-life example? Imagine a conversation filled with emotional pressure. Instead of explaining yourself, stay calm, breathe, shift focus. Say, "I hear you," and stop there. That short phrase is powerful. The other person might push again, but when they see that their tactics don't work anymore, they retreat. Here's the truth. You don't need to win arguments. You need to win the game of influence. Often the strongest one in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need to speak at all. That's control. That's self-mastery. That's philosophy in action, Machiavelli style. Manipulators thrive in noise. They feed off your anxiety, your doubt, your anger. But if you stay silent, you hand their chaos right back to them. They lose balance. They lose footing. The mask falls. Because silence steals the spotlight. No audience, no act. Simple as that. This is why true leaders listen more than they speak. They observe. They let others reveal themselves. They don't take the bait. Wisdom lives in that calm, calculated silence. Because the moment you speak just to defend yourself, you're already under attack. But when you remain quiet with purpose, you own the battlefield. Silence also protects your intentions. It keeps your next move hidden. It blocks verbal traps. It shows that you move with purpose, not impulse. And Machiavelli would smile at that, because the real art of influence lies in mastering yourself and making others question their own power. If you've ever dealt with a manipulator, drop a comment below and share your story. And make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. Because in the next part, I'll show you how silence can make you unforgettable without ever saying a word. The art of staying silent to be remembered. When silence leaves the deepest mark. Sometimes, silence screams louder than any voice. Have you noticed that? A pause at the right moment can hit harder than 1,000 words. Machiavelli knew how precise. Silence could make people uncomfortable, intrigued, and most of all, impressed. What isn't said often lingers longer than what is. That's the brilliance of strategic silence. Think of a funeral. Silence says everything. Or in a heated argument, when someone just locks eyes and says nothing. That's power. It's the art of speaking without speaking. Body language, timing, restraint, all of it communicates presence. And if you can harness that, you become unforgettable. You become dominance, personified. In the game of power, it's not always the loudest person who gets remembered. Often it's the one who stayed calm in chaos, the one who didn't flinch. Think of history's great leaders. They didn't need to talk constantly. Their presence alone held weight. Their silence was their signature. And that silence was feared and respected. Have you ever met someone who said very little, but each word landed like a punch? That's no accident. That's calculation. It's influence without force. It leaves others wanting more. And in that wanting, your authority grows. Because in a noisy world, quiet confidence becomes magnetic. Let's go practical. In meetings or negotiations, when someone pressures you, don't fill the silence. Let them squirm. Let them overexpose. Just stay calm. Observe. One well-timed silence can flip the entire dynamic. Suddenly, you're the one in control, without saying a single word. Silence is also a form of presence. Sometimes, saying nothing makes you more noticeable than shouting. And that's when the respect begins. Because respect grows out of impact. And impact lives in control. And who has more control than the one who doesn't flinch, who lets silence speak for him? There's another layer. Silence as elegant punishment. No shouting, no drama. Just a calm withdrawal, a subtle look that says, "I've seen enough." That hits harder than any insult. Sometimes walking away silently carries more power than 100 arguments. Presence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's deadly, quiet. Machiavelli would see this as a high-level move. Silence isn't passivity. It's invisible action. It's emotional leadership. It's asserting yourself with discipline and mystique, and when you do that well, you don't need to prove anything. People just feel your strength, even when you're standing still. If this resonates, drop a comment below. I speak through my silence. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, because next, I'll show you how silence can actually save your relationships through emotional intelligence. The best part is just getting started. Silence and emotional intelligence. How staying quiet can save relationships. Sometimes what breaks a relationship isn't what's done, it's what's said in the heat of the moment. One poorly chosen word can cut deeper than any action. Machiavelli would get this instantly. It's not about hiding your feelings, it's about protecting relationships with wisdom. And silence, in this case, is a powerful pause that prevents permanent damage. In love, family, or work, we all face that moment, the boiling point where things could explode. That's when silence can shift everything. Breathe, observe, hold back. It's not weakness, it's mastery. Because saying the wrong thing too soon can ruin years of trust. But a pause, a silence, can hold everything together. It's hard, especially when you feel attacked, misunderstood, or desperate to explain yourself. But the more emotional the situation, the more valuable your silence becomes. Those who master their impulses win the deeper game. Often, the strongest position in an argument is the one that doesn't need to be spoken. Want a real example? Picture a couple in the middle of an argument. One explodes, the other stays quiet, but not cold, just present. That silence isn't rejection, it's protection. It says, I care too much to make this worse. And when the emotion cools down, real conversation can begin. That's what emotional intelligence looks like in action. The same principle applies at work. A leader who handles criticism with calm silence earns more respect than one who reacts defensively. A moment of silence shows strength, not weakness. It tells the room, I think before I act. That restraint becomes influence. And influence, built on calm, is almost unshakable. Silence is also listening. And listening is one of the most underrated skills in human connection. When you stop talking and actually hear someone, without waiting to reply, you build bridges. You make people feel seen. And that, in itself, is powerful. Emotional connection is born in the space between words. Silence can also heal. Sometimes, you don't need to fix anything, just be there. Sitting in silence with someone you care about, without pressure, without performance, creates a sacred bond. It tells them, you don't need to explain yourself to be loved. That kind of silence restores trust. Machiavelli, often seen as cold, would understand this perfectly. Strategic silence isn't about being distant, it's about being emotionally intelligent. Knowing when to speak is as important as knowing what to say, and sometimes the smartest move is saying nothing at all. Have you ever avoided a disaster just by staying silent? Share it in the comments. Your story might help someone else. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell, because next, we'll explore how silence can earn respect without ever raising your voice. The silence that teaches how to command respect. Without raising your voice, some people think that in order to be respected, you need to raise your voice, yell, intimidate. But that's a common and dangerous mistake. Machiavelli would never waste authority by shouting. Real power doesn't come from volume, it comes from presence. And when silence is used with intention, it educates, imposes, and transforms. Parents, teachers, leaders, mentors, they can all command respect without saying a word. Sometimes, just crossing your arms and making eye contact is enough to shift the entire energy in a room. That silence isn't weakness, it's leadership. And those who master that kind of presence command attention without ever needing to demand it. Silence becomes discipline without trauma. When you don't respond to aggression with more aggression, you interrupt the cycle of damage. You show that there's another way to handle things, a way that teaches through example, not fear. And people raised in that energy learn to respect not just you, but themselves too. Think of a boss who yells at their team. They might get short-term results, but they destroy trust, motivation, and long-term loyalty. Now imagine a leader who hears a mistake, stays calm, and says, "Understood. Let's fix it." That pause before the response, that controlled silence, is powerful. It makes everyone reflect before reacting. Here's a simpler example. Remember that one teacher who never raised their voice? The one whose quiet presence was enough to settle an entire classroom? They didn't rule through fear. They ruled through respect. That's presence. That's influence. And the silence behind it was more commanding than any scream. The key is in your posture, your calm tone, your timing. When you let silence do the heavy lifting, your words gain weight. If you're talking all the time, your voice becomes background noise. But if you speak only when necessary, your voice becomes law. That's how you teach, without ever wounding. Silence also gives others the chance to self-correct. When someone crosses a line and you respond with nothing but a steady look, no sarcasm, no snark, it echoes. They feel it. That echo? That's reflection. That's discomfort. That's growth. Machiavelli would call that invisible influence, the kind that lasts. True respect doesn't come from fear, it comes from admiration. And no one admires someone who loses control. The most iconic leaders in history knew how to use silence to teach. Their stillness was their message, because those who master silence master how others listen. If this sparked something in you, leave a comment below. Ever used silent authority in your life? Let's hear about it. And be sure to subscribe and hit the bell, because next we'll explore why silence can sometimes disturb more than shouting ever could. When silence is deafening, how saying nothing can hurt more than yelling. Silence has a dark power. It can echo inside someone's mind like a drumbeat pounding on their conscience. Sometimes staying quiet disturbs far more than raising your voice. Because when someone expects a reaction and gets none, their entire strategy collapses. That's when silence becomes punishment. A quiet, elegant punishment that cuts deeper than any scream. Machiavelli would see this as a refined form of control. Not responding to provocation, insult, or emotional manipulation is a quiet way of saying, "You have no power over me." And that stings. It drives people crazy. The more they try to provoke you, the more your silence breaks them. The less you react, the more they unravel. People who feed off drama expect noise. They crave the clash, the chaos. But when met with silence, they feel rejected, powerless, and off balance. Because silence reveals something yelling never can: calculated indifference. And there's nothing more unsettling for a manipulator or a narcissist than realizing they no longer affect you. A clear example? Imagine someone insults you in front of others, hoping for a scene. If you yell back, you give them exactly what they want. But if you stay silent, calm, composed, suddenly, the embarrassment falls on them. The room feels it. The energy shifts. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects their own shame. That same kind of silence works in relationships too. When you've said everything 1,000 times and they still don't change, silence isn't giving up. It's a final message. I'm done explaining. And those who can read energy will feel it. The others will eventually learn the hard way. Either way, your self-mastery stays intact. Silence also exposes weakness. When you remain calm, the other person starts to panic. They push harder, talk faster, get louder, revealing their imbalance. That's power. That's emotional intelligence. That's strategic dominance. The battlefield shifts to your advantage, without you saying a word. And let's not forget, silence breeds doubt. When you don't explain, they start to question. What does he know? Why didn't he respond? That curiosity eats away at their confidence. Silence forces their mind to do the damage for you. 1,000 imagined reasons weigh more than one actual reply. Machiavelli would call silence the most elegant form of provocation. It doesn't accuse, it doesn't explain, it doesn't defend. It just exists, calmly, unbothered, immovable. And in that space, others are forced to face themselves. Silence takes away their control, their performance, their comfort. So tell me in the comments, have you ever used silence to say what words couldn't? Drop your story below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, because next we'll go even deeper. How silence isn't just power, it's your gateway to personal transformation. Silence to evolve. How silence connects you to your inner power. In a world that's constantly screaming, choosing silence is an act of rebellion and strength. Machiavelli, though known for politics, would understand. Some battles can only be won in the quiet chambers of the soul, because when external noise stops, internal truth starts to speak. And that is where self-mastery begins. Silence puts you face to face with the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Fears, frustrations, desires, wounds, everything you try to bury under distractions, noise, and small talk. But when you choose silence, you begin to hear clearly. And that truth, it doesn't flatter, but it frees. Real power begins the moment you stop running from yourself. It's in silence that you find your compass. You learn what drives you and what blocks you. When the chaos fades, what's left is you. Raw, real, unfiltered. And yes, that's scary. But growth always is. Machiavelli might call this internal fortification, the kind that doesn't need applause or validation, only alignment. Try this. Spend 20 minutes a day in complete silence. No phone, no music, no scrolling. Just you, a notebook, and your thoughts. At first it'll feel strange, even uncomfortable. But then something shifts. Patterns emerge, fears surface, desires clarify. That's not just quiet time. That's self-recovery. Silence is also spiritual. No religion required. It's sacred because it reconnects you to what truly matters, your essence, your purpose, your inner fire. And people who are centered in that fire are unshakable. That's the foundation of real influence, not charisma, clarity. There's wisdom in staying quiet, not just with others, but with yourself. No need to judge every thought or explain every emotion. Just watch, witness, be present. That presence will make you sharper, stronger, more whole. Because when you master inner silence, you stop chasing and start choosing. Machiavelli wouldn't have called it meditation, but he would have used it. Because silence isn't just stillness, it's preparation. It sharpens your perception. It protects your energy. It teaches you that not every battle deserves your sword, and the most powerful leaders know where not to fight. And here's the truth. Once you've spent enough time in silence, you recognize noise fast. You see through lies. You feel people's energy. You hear what's not being said. That's freedom. Because when you no longer feel the urge to react, you're already in control. If that hit home, comment below. Silence reconnects me. And be sure to subscribe and hit the bell, because next I'll show you one of silence's greatest powers. It doesn't just protect, it makes people respect you without needing a single explanation. Don't explain. Make them wonder. Using silence to trigger curiosity and respect. There's something undeniably powerful about someone who doesn't explain themselves, who listens, observes, and simply smiles. Machiavelli would have loved that. Because the less you explain, the more others try to figure you out. And in that mental chase, respect is born. What isn't obvious becomes presence, and silence becomes mystery. Mysterious people trigger curiosity and respect. But not because they're trying, it's natural. They just don't give everything away. They don't react how others expect. And that creates tension, and in tension, there's power. Others start wondering, does he know something I don't? Why didn't she reply? And just like that, the power dynamic shifts. People who over-explain weaken their own image. It's like a magician revealing all his tricks before the show. Where's the magic? Where's the tension? When you stay silent, you protect your most valuable asset, your unpredictability. And unpredictable people aren't just intriguing, they're respected, sometimes even feared. Want a clear example? In a meeting, someone talks nonstop. But then one person speaks once, calmly, with precision. Everyone listens. The loud person fades. The quiet one stands out. It works in relationships too. Sometimes a vague response or even a well-placed silence speaks louder than a full explanation. Let their minds do the work. Machiavelli knew the truth. Real power doesn't lie in convincing. It lies in letting others conclude on their own. And to do that, you need to master the art of strategic silence. Say just enough to spark interest. Hold back enough to build tension. Be clear enough to feel honest, but vague enough to make them lean in. That's high-level influence. It's not about hiding. It's about choosing what's worth sharing. In negotiations, for example, silence after making an offer is gold. The first one to speak usually loses. Let them fill the gap. Let them oversell. Let them explain things you didn't even ask. You stay still and in control. Deliberate vagueness creates legend. Did he really do that? What did she mean with that look? These kinds of questions keep you alive in their minds. You're remembered, not for what you revealed, but for what you made them feel. A seed of doubt grows into a forest of respect. Think about it. The most powerful people in the world are rarely accessible. They're not out here explaining themselves on social media. They're not justifying their silence. They simply are, and you can be that too. It starts by choosing when to speak and when to let silence speak for you. If that unlocked something in your mind, drop a comment. I don't explain, I impose. And make sure you're subscribed and the bell is on, because next, you'll learn how silence isn't just mystery, it's your best defense against your impulsive ego. Shut up to win. How strategic silence defeats the impulsive ego. The ego is loud. It wants to be right, to be heard, to win at all costs. But Machiavelli would tell you this: the one who masters their ego masters the world. Because in the realm of influence, the louder you are, the weaker you appear. Those who respond impulsively show weakness, but those who stay silent hold the real power. Every time you feel the urge to clap back, that's your ego begging to take the wheel. And the ego feeds on conflict, attention, and validation. But feeding your ego is like fueling a fire that ends up burning you. When you choose silence instead, you choose command. And command is where power lives. The key lies in the pause. That split second before you speak. That's your moment of truth. That's when you decide if you're just another voice in the chaos, or someone who leads with control. And this applies everywhere. Online arguments, real-life confrontations, criticism, disrespect. If you react to everything, you're a puppet. If you stay calm, you're a player. Machiavelli would see silence as self-discipline and ultimate strength. Winning an argument is nothing if you lose your presence. But when you don't flinch, don't explain, don't play their game, you win by default. Because you've already won the war inside yourself. And that's the only war that really matters. Try this. Next time someone provokes you, pause. Breathe. Count to 5. Then ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Will this elevate my image? Or just satisfy my pride for 5 seconds? That habit alone can change your life. Because when you stop reacting to everything, people start reacting to you. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. It tells the world, I don't need to prove anything. And that, my friend, is magnetic. It draws respect, it imposes presence, it creates mystery, and it makes it clear you are in control without ever raising your voice. And if someone calls you weak for staying silent, smile, because silence isn't running away, it's rising, above. It's intelligence disguised as stillness. And those who see silence as weakness are the very ones still ruled by their ego. In the game of power, silence is one of the deadliest weapons on the board. Look at the most powerful people. They don't explode. They stay composed. They let others unravel. They speak last, if at all. That's presence. That's strategy. That's Machiavellian wisdom in action. Winning by saying less, but meaning more. And those who win like that don't have to fight again. If this hit your ego in the best way possible, drop a comment. My silence is my weapon. Subscribe, hit the bell, and stay with me, because what comes next will seal your transformation. The conclusion that turns knowledge into action and silence into strength. Now let me ask you something. How many battles have you entered simply because you couldn't stay quiet? How many times has impulse spoken louder than strategy? Maybe it was with a family member, or during that argument where you just had to prove a point, only to lose their respect in the end. The truth is, those who master silence master themselves, and those who master themselves win long before the fight even begins. But what will you do with this knowledge now? Will you keep over-explaining, handing out your weaknesses like candy? Or will you start using silence to protect your energy, command respect, and elevate your presence? Here's my challenge to you. Stay silent where you used to react. Observe where you once defended. Hold your ground with presence, not with noise. Try it for a week, then come back and tell me what changed, because it will. The shift is subtle, but the effect, profound. If this video lit a fire inside you, drop a comment below and tell me what hit hardest. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and stay connected, because what we're building here isn't just content. It's a path to self-mastery, personal power, and psychological freedom. And before you go, there's one more move. Watch the companion video, Be Feared, Not Ignored, The Silent Path to Respect. That video will show you how silence doesn't just protect you, it makes others take notice. Because being ignored is weakness, but being feared silently, that's an art.